You're listening to the Career Diaries with Brianna or Sherry, where each week we laugh and learn with industry experts, talk through the highs and lows of their career journeys, and unlock the secrets to career success in any field. Email bri@careerdiariespodcast.com. That's BRI@careerdiariespodcast.com with your burning career questions to get them answered on the show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Career Diaries podcast. I'm your host, Brianna Autry, and today I am joined by Kareem Abulaban. He is the founder and creative director at Kiaro. How's it going, Kareem?
Doing great. How are you, Bri? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, happy to have you. We were just chatting before we hit record, and you were telling me about your last name, and you were saying that it's called it stands for the father of yogurt.
Yeah, so I'm Palestinian Lebanese, and that name Abulaban came from my father's side, who's Lebanese. And what I was telling you was that way back in the day, great-grandfather, he was in Lebanon during the French and Lebanese Civil War. And so he would go around to the different soldiers and give them yogurt. Yogurt was a great probiotic. In wartime, not a lot of things are available to you. And the soldiers really appreciated that and started nicknaming him Abulaban. Oh, here comes Abulaban coming down the street with another batch of yogurt. And so that just became our surname. And as far as I know, that's the only one that we have. We have no idea what came before that. But I am the father of yogurt now. I'm the next in line anyway.
Do you like yogurt?
I do, which is odd because I am engaged to a woman, a beautiful woman, who does not like yogurt. So it has created some issue. No, I'm just kidding. It's fine. It's all good.
Yeah, if you guys have kids, it's going to become like a family problem.
It's going to be a problem. It's going to be the have yogurts and the have nots.
The Montagues and the Capulets.
Exactly.
I'm really excited to chat with you today. Your career and your background are very interesting to me for a multitude of reasons. The majority of listeners of my show are in tech. And it looks like you came from a tech background and then moved into video production and founding your own company. So I want to chat about how you got to that point and what led you there. And then I want to talk about what you're working on today. I think it'll be fun for people to hear about all the locations you've shot at and the fun stories you have about through your work. But before we get into that, can you just briefly describe what you do, what Kiaro does, and the high level?
Of course. So Kiaro is this awesome little video agency in San Diego. That's where we're based out of. We do work all across the nation. If you are a potential client listening, don't hesitate to reach out. But besides that, we do a multitude of different work, mostly focusing on video and motion. We do commercials for OTT, for streaming, for broadcast. We do commercials for LinkedIn platforms, any video platform as well. Branded content that takes a brand's narrative and puts it on the big screen in creative ways. We also do motion graphics as well as some web animation concepts as well. So really a lot of different work. One thing we don't focus on, at least at this time, is we don't focus on videography or event coverage, but we really take great pride in our creative capabilities as a team and really producing high quality branded narrative work for different brands throughout the country.
And what are some of the most exciting brands you've worked with? They don't have to be well known, but just which ones really interested you?
Yeah. There's been a few for a couple different reasons. One of our favorites has been Seismic, which is a SaaS technology platform. They are very well known in the sales enablement space, but we do a lot of great work for them. One of the more well-known brands I worked for was Oakley. We did some work for them in the past. We've done work for Opkicks, which is a small action camera company, for Rourke Clothing, which does almost like Lululemon Viore high-quality clothing garments, but for action sports. So think like surfing, skating, moto, hiking. Those are some of the brands that we worked with. If you kind of take a listen to some of the brands I'm mentioning, there isn't necessarily one particular niche or industry that we focus on, and that's by design. I have some tenant beliefs on that. But we can get into that a little bit later. And those are some of the bigger brand names that we focus on and some of the ones we've had the most fun with. There is one brand in particular. We unfortunately don't work with them anymore, but they're amazing to work with. We've worked with them for years. They're called Mozzie Heating, Air, and Solar. They're, as you can guess by the name, an HVAC company. And most people think, when you think HVAC ads, I like to coin them like the used car style sale ads. They're boring, very cheesy. Just like, hey, call now and get $20 off your heating and air replacement, right? No one's buying that. No one's calling off that. So one of the reasons why I really loved working with this client is because they entrusted us with a lot of creative autonomy. And what we were able to do was actually craft engaging story narratives in a commercial wrapper, essentially, that told the story from the perspective of the actual potential customer. So these are stories that you or I, like suffering through the heat of the summer in Southern California, would relate to when we're like, oh my God, I need an air conditioned bad. These are actual stories, actual narratives that a viewer might engage with and find themselves in that position and find entertaining. And that was one of my favorite clients because we'd always hear back from them that they had customers calling and saying, hey, we don't need an air conditioner or heater anytime soon. We just want to say we loved your commercial. We thought it was hilarious. And especially being in the commercial world and the ad world and marketing, any chance you have to make a touch point with your customer, with a potential customer, and stay top of mind, like that's massive. And that's something that I always really cherish and always really loved working with them on. They did get bought out by a big conglomerate, which is why we no longer work with them. But besides that, it was an amazing working relationship, and we really love working on those creative ads.
Yeah, and it sounds like just from hearing you talk, you get a ton of fulfillment out of what you do. If someone's listening to this episode of the show and they're thinking, oh, I want to either change my career, jump into something new, or maybe just progress in the current career I'm in, what do you hope they take away from this conversation?
That's a great question. I think once you hear the background I'm in, where I started, which is, I think, where a lot of people are in terms of the hypothetical person you're talking about right now, I think we probably started off in the same place, just like a lot of other creatives. We had big hopes and dreams and aspirations, and those dreams are still alive and thriving today, just in a different direction. And I really hope that people take away that you can still have a really fulfilling creative career, and it doesn't have to be built in glamour. Like, you don't have to be working right in the core of Hollywood, for example. There are really great ways to innovate in creative spaces at any business that you're in, no matter how lame you think the subject matter is or how exciting it is. There's always a way to apply creativity to it. And that's why your employer hires you, right? Or you start your own business. They hire you because they saw something, they saw a creative spark that they could not fill on their own, and they are entrusting you to do that. So I hope you take away that lesson from this, that there are plenty of creative paths to take in this world that don't have to be the traditional ones that you see on social media and everything.
That's really well said, and I couldn't agree more with you. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So, on that vein, the majority of my listeners, as I mentioned, are in tech. So, from your background, it looks like that's where you started. What prompted your move into production?
Yeah. So I was a multimedia manager slash head of video at a SaaS company here in San Diego. And I really loved what I did there. But it was coming to a point where when I started with that company, the startup phase that we were in was really scrappy and go-getter. And there was a lot of great stories we were telling and we were able to focus on and share with our customers. But as we got bigger, and this is my perspective anyway, but as we got bigger and more funding came in from investors, the shift changed from the focus of the company changed from focusing on delivering great customer experiences to fulfilling shareholder and or investor requirements. And I've talked to a lot of different business owners and ones that have, especially ones that have received funding, and that often seems to be the case. As you continue to accept different rounds, you start to sell off, potentially, every time, but potentially, what was the core reason of the business. And it becomes less about the altruistic purpose that the business was started to help someone, right? To help a specific individual, your target individual, to only making money and treating everything as a number, right? That's the bottom line. Of course, every business needs to make money, but for me, I'm pretty sure I have undiagnosed ADHD, thanks TikTok. But that, in my opinion, has led to like really strong, I guess, like a moral compass or the need to help people where I can. And so where I saw that disconnect of the company heading in one direction and I want to continue doing things for the right reason, it just felt like it was a proper time to say goodbye. I felt like I could help other businesses and other business owners better running under my own ship, running on my own ship rather than on someone else's. And that's what prompted me to leave the tech space as an employee and start my own production company where I still service people in the tech industry, but just as an outside consultant typically, or an outside perspective, bringing in fresh ideas.
And how long before you made this shift? How long was your career before you made the shift?
In technology, cumulative about 7 years. I am now 31. So graduating college, man, 31 sucks. But graduating college and diving right in, I was in B2B sales for Apple for a bit, then transferred over into the SaaS company that I was talking about, and then stuck it out there, learned some amazing lessons, learned so much, grew so much, met some amazing people, both customers and fellow colleagues, and I wouldn't trade that experience for the world, but here we are.
I didn't realize you were in B2B sales.
It was not for me.
You don't like the cold calling? What did you not like? Living off of
Oh,
commission?
goodness. That was the problem, is we didn't get commission. Tim Apple, if you're listening, pay your B2B sales employees commission, please.
Wait, you did B2B sales at Apple? Okay, so you're addressing Tim Cook. Got it.
Tim Apple, yes, the very same. Yeah, just B2B sales in that regard, like I really did enjoy the work I did, but the financial compensation at that specific role, not every B2B role, was just very, I guess, counterculture to the rest of the industry.
Mhm.
Maybe it's not the right word, but it was interesting.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, and I know lots of people who can as well. So, good on you for moving forward and starting your own thing. I want to talk more about what you're doing now. So,
Mhm.
what's the most challenging part about starting your own thing and then working in it day in and day out?
Yeah, there's always the top level comments when this question is asked. Oh, how do you find clients? All that stuff. I don't think I'm really gonna answer that part because that problem exists no matter what level you're at. Like, it's always some part of the problem. For me, I think one of the largest issues I had was having realizing the lack of resources that you have available to you when you're first starting out on your own. Does that make sense? So, like, when you're working in a corporate environment or for any business, really, you have a lot of people doing a lot of things and that you potentially over time take for granted, right? And then when you're on your own, you're like, oh, I got to do this. Oh, I got to do all of this, right? Like all those things. You got to be wearing all the hats. And I'm no stranger to wearing multiple hats, especially working in corporate video at the beginning. You're expected to wear almost every hat. But then you're not only doing that, but you're also the marketing. You're wearing the marketing hat. You're wearing the sales hat. You're wearing the outreach hat. You're wearing everything you could possibly imagine at the same time, all at once. And so that was one of the most difficult things for me to wrap my head around and come to terms with. But with a good amount of organization and getting everything squared away and more experience, you grow into that role really fast. It becomes a lot easier and much more manageable over time. The other thing that is always a challenge, especially starting out, is you have these big dreams and ideas. And this is, I know we'll talk about this later, but that those big dreams and ideas often come to clash with client expectations, where you have an idea or a vision, especially as a creative person. You have an idea or a vision for this big, beautiful campaign or whatever, but you have to balance out like executing your creative vision versus actually delivering what the client wants. And sometimes those are not on the same level. And that's always something that's gonna push you to or put yourself in a position of challenge, no matter what stage of the business you're in.
Yeah. And if people want to start their own thing or want to even get into just your industry in general, where do you suggest they start? Where did you start?
There's two answers to that question. I started in corporate, right? In the corporate America side of video and production, which I think is a great place to start. And I think that is something that gives a lot more opportunity and accessibility to people all over the country, right? Like you can find some great corporations to work for in Indiana or in Wisconsin or wherever, versus if you're trying to be dead set on working in the film industry or in the professional commercial industry. Typically, a lot of those ads or those productions take place in LA. And so when you move to LA, one, you have to want to move to LA. I am not one of those people, but you have to be in LA all the time and be on it all the time. So that's like the other path. I personally think it's best for people to sharpen your skills in corporate video first. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, you have to wear those multiple hats that I was talking about, right? You have to be the director, you have to be the producer, you have to be the editor, sometimes the motion designer, you have to be the sound person, you have to do all that stuff. And that all that does is just sharpen you and make you a better creative person. Because when you're not only doing the creative side of stuff, but you're also doing the delegation between you and the stakeholders with your company, right? You're working with C-level suite on a campaign. You're working with project managers or product managers, right? You have to have those conversations and you have to really sharpen your business acumen and be able to delegate different tasks to different team members, but also negotiate with those stakeholders and compromise on certain things that you may not agree on. And that acumen really goes a long way in your career at whatever stage of whatever career you're in. So if you decide to start in corporate video, but move towards film production or professional commercial production in LA, those skills are easily transferable. You'll be significantly better off than someone that doesn't have those skills or doesn't know how to convey their ideas, right? Being a creative and working in any creative position, you have to be able to sell your vision and to convey it just using words first and foremost. And if you can't accomplish that basic task, frankly, you're not really going to go super far in your career. And so again, working in that corporate video space, you're forced to polish up all that communication skills and really help hone in what your vision is, right? A lot of times you only have one chance to sell a stakeholder on what you want to execute on. And if you're not able to convey that vision, that idea's out the door. You're going to do what they want to do, not what you want to do.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And I want to circle back to something you said about the fact that you don't like to be too niche with your clientele. Why is that?
Yeah. So I hear all the time, especially on the YouTube content mill, focus on one niche, like only do medical videos or only do, I don't know, agricultural videos, whatever it is. In my opinion, I think that actually does you a disservice as a creative. I think one of the strengths that Kiaro has and other like-minded creatives is that we are willing to accept work from different industries. And for example, going back to the HVAC with Mozzie Heating, Air, and Solar, we could have easily done a used car style sales ad. Come on down for $20 off your heater. No one wants to see that again. But we approached it and we took our expertise and our experience from different projects. So, hey, what if we actually craft a different experience for your viewer here and actually tell a relatable story? I think by working across different industries, you're faced with different challenges. And when you're faced with different challenges, you have to come up with unique and creative solutions to, overcome them. What that does is that once you accomplish that solution, it goes into your repertoire, your Rolodex of your arsenal of different tools. And then when you go to a different industry, you have the opportunity to disrupt it, at least in some small part, right? Disrupt it with a different idea or something a little bit more edgy or out of the box that's not what everyone else is doing. And I think, again, with the current situation of content and social media and advertising, there's so much noise from all over the place. Being able to cut through it in whatever way, shape, or form is huge. We were just at a keynote yesterday, and we were talking with Paul Amundsen of Studio M, which is Monster Energy's internal studio, right? Internal agency. And he was talking about how one of the editors wanted to try something new. And so they took PBR, which is professional bull riding, and they cut a bunch of clips that they had recorded from one of their Monster sponsored PBR events with dubstep music. And it's like nothing that you would like the gut reaction is, okay, pro bull riding, cowboy music, right? Western music, Southern music. You don't really think otherwise, but then putting in dubstep was such like a I couldn't look away. Like I just kept watching. Like, this is so different, right? This is just interesting. Was it like the perfect solution for that? That's not for me to answer, right? That's not my job to answer. But it got me to pay attention. I think it did its job. And again, I think working across different industries, you gain that experience to be able to overcome different challenges that you wouldn't be able to gain that experience just working in one industry alone. And I think that raises the creative tide for all shapes across different industries when you're able to like almost osmosis that information across different solutions.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And I think that's really well said and can translate to people in all professions and walks of life, etc., in that cut your teeth in the corporate of whatever industry you want to pursue, and then you can move off and do your own thing or move to a smaller company and help them build up when their mission is more aligned with what you want to do. The opportunities are endless when you start from that point as opposed to another one. So I want to jump into our listener questions. We have one here from Sydney. She asks, how do you approach balancing creativity with client expectations and objectives? You touched on this a little bit.
It is a dance, a never ending dance. It is always threading the needle, right? Like you have, as creatives, we have this vision. Okay, I could see it. I could see it in my head. I could see it clearly. This is how it's going to go down. It's going to be awesome. And you get it on paper and you show it to your client, and it's not the response you wanted, right? Is this it? Like, or is it, I don't know if this is really our brand. I think we have to do a better job as a whole of asking ourselves, why do we want to accomplish this piece of creative the way that we want to do it? And so I think we need to take an introspective approach and look at it. Am I saying, oh, I'm looking at the Wiggins poster behind you here. And do we want it's a basketball player for anyone that's listening on a non-video podcast. It's a basketball player on a poster and he's going for a slam dunk. Do we want, if we were doing a commercial for a basketball player, do we want him to dunk and break the glass because it looks cool, or it's like a super sweet effect, or something that's like maybe temporarily in vogue for video editing trends, for example? Or are we choosing to execute it this way because it actually accomplishes the goals of our clients? And I think that's a question that's often overlooked with a lot of creatives. They want to do things because they can and because it looks cool, but they're not really asking the question of, why are we doing this? Why are we approaching it this way? Or is it a better way to approach? I think we should really take a step back and evaluate that and really put ourselves in the shoes of our clients and make sure that this is actually in their best interest, right? When you're hired on as an agency or as a contractor or whatever it is, or even an employee, you're doing things for the company, not for yourself. And so you have to really align with that brand and engulf yourself in it and really be a part of it, breathe it, eat it, sleep with it, whatever. And just make sure everything is aligned to your client's vision, and then inject your style on top of that, right? Because they've got their checklist. They got to make sure the messaging is good, the offer is good, like all that stuff is accomplished before any of the fun stuff can take place. And again, a lot of creative work I see oftentimes overlooks the core messaging of the ad that is being done and just focuses on the cool, flashy stuff.
Really well said. And I think, again, something that people can take into account for every job. So, final question from Jake, which you already touched on before, but I want Jake's question to be addressed. What advice would you give to someone starting out in the video and production industry?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One, don't be obsessed with gear, right? I've made that pitfall before too many times. Just still happens. I don't know. But gear is always coming. It's always going. There's always going to be a new piece of gear, right? Make friends with your rental houses and rent this stuff until you can afford to like really invest back into your business. You're not going to shoot yourself in the foot. The bigger thing I think is more of a career path advice. And again, it's don't knock out creative careers in the corporate America space. Like corporate America has its problems. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of things that should be fixed, especially when trying to assimilate creative people into the hierarchy of corporate America, right? a lot of things that can be touched on there. But regardless, there are so many amazing stories and so many brand stories that have yet to be told in corporate America because the creatives are all infatuated with Hollywood and working in big film and everything. You can do some amazing, really great work working in-house for a corporate environment. And it's not like you have to go in and wear a suit and tie. It's not going to kill you. You actually have, in general, a lot of autonomy to be able to create something that has your stamp on it. Like it has your initials, and you work on a lot smaller teams, but it also means you have more input versus when you're typically working on set in LA, you're typically, you're hired on for the most part, unless you're a very high, like above the line type set worker, like a director, a producer, etc. But in general, you have a lot of autonomy working in corporate America as a creative, and you can accomplish a lot. Don't knock it out. It also helps you form a lot of big networks, right? Those people that you meet at your job or through your job, there'll be connections as long as LinkedIn is around for a while, for a really long time. And you can rely on those connections into your future for additional work, for new jobs, who knows, right? So corporate America is a really great way to get your career started, and then you can make a move into other spaces from there.
Thank you for sharing that. And thanks to everyone who wrote in and to everyone who listened. And Kareem, thank you for sharing a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are. I think it's an exciting industry. I know that you get to travel a lot for work. So I learned a lot today. So I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. And for people that want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Great question. Visit Kiaro.tv. That's KIARO.tv.
Okay, great. And we'll make sure to include that in the show notes as well. Kareem, have a great rest of your day. And thanks, everyone, for listening.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Career Diaries podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review to help get word out about the show. Email Bree@careerdiariespodcast.com with your burning career questions to get them answered on the podcast. And be sure to subscribe so you never miss another conversation.